Welcome back, everybody. You got Will and Iman here from the Block Runner MetaZone, Rovi, and Inscribe, and we're just 18 hours removed from the nuclear explosion that happened with NFTs and DMT.
The nuclear explosion, right? Yeah, that's what it feels like. There's definitely some sort of like fallout remnants.
Yeah,
that
we're radioactive at the moment, dude.
I guess so, dude. So we've, if you're new, I guess, which I'm sure everybody who's been watching us for a while now has noticed what's been happening over the last 24-hour period. We finally formalized the DMT concept that we've been discussing over the last several months, right?
Yeah. So here's breaking news. It says from the Ordinal's Nexus, secure your NFTs now. So what is an NFT? That's the thing that we dropped yesterday. It's a YouTube video, 55 minutes long. It intended to be really 20 minutes.
Yeah, we wanted it to be 30 minutes max. I remember signaling to TJ, he's like, dude, don't let us go past 30 minutes.
TJ was flagging us down. He was like, it's like bringing down a plane and shit. Like,
you guys just can't be stopped.
Yeah.
Well, you even asked like in the middle, I was like, are we going too much into the details, the weeds? And I was like, I feel like it's needed. Like, let's keep going with this, let's follow step by step what everything means conceptually, and actually what's the operations and procedures to follow here. And even with all that, it's still not enough, which is understandable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The thing is, we've been working on this for months, and so we're able to kind of like quickly dissect, the questions and understand like where they're coming from. And
right. Yeah. We've been obviously keeping our eyes on Twitter, Discord, especially, the Tap Discord.
We're just going crazy.
Absolutely bonkers fest.
We'll show you how crazy it got.
It was an interesting night for sure. And a lot of things happened, but ultimately we've ruffled some feathers, obviously. Some people who have shown great love and deep, support for us over the last few months have now become like
abandoned. We're the enemies now.
Yeah, so there's a few things we want to just talk about. Hopefully this doesn't take longer than 20-30 minutes, just for the sake of everyone's busy life, schedules. But yeah, we want to clear some confusion that's in the air. We want to address a few things of you guys are potentially damaging the bitmap ecosystem and stuff like this. There's a lot of misunderstandings and then, of course, clear up some confusions around like the actual operations themselves, right?
Yeah, and I think before we get started, the main question that we get is like, well, how do you mint the NFT, right? There's the concept of NFTs, which is non-arbitrary tokens.
Correct.
And then there's the actual token called NFT.
Yeah.
Right? Just like you call ORDI or BTC. It's like, it's NFT, right?
It's a ticker.
Yeah, it's just a ticker.
Right. And the TAP protocol allows for tickers, basically any ticker that's not 2 or 4, right?
Correct. Right. It could be 3, 5, all the way to 32.
Correct. So we chose most TAP tokens have 3 value tickers. So yeah, I mean, there was some deliberation between, what do we want to call this token? Of course, like we described yesterday, a lot of the origination of this DMT concept originated from bitmap, right? That bitmap is where we first definitively, I guess, discovered the root, fundamental value of what it is that makes bitmap so intuitively interesting and attractive, right? And we again, the story is we slapped an umbrella label to that called digital matter theory, right? And then through our trying to figure out how do we devise some sort of framework to kind of enable more of this to occur in the crypto space. Yeah, we didn't want to confine this to somehow it's only singular to one ecosystem. This is potentially a framework that could be enabled by more creators, more developers,
even outside of Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. All right, so we'll get into kind of that concept again in a few minutes, but I wanted to share quickly how to inscribe the NFT token. So it's very simple. So I'm going to share this tweet. Shout out to Callie here, and he says, how to mint NFT tokens. Search for a valid block. Go to Unisat, search. Type this in, right? You zoom in. It's quote BLK, and then it's you replace the X with the block that you want to get.
Or you're interested to find out if somebody else has already inscribed it. So, it's just like how bitmap was, the first to inscribe.
Yeah.
Lowest inscription number, right? That's going to be the valid version of it.
So what you want to do is you want to make sure it doesn't already exist, meaning doesn't somebody own it, right? So if you don't see any results, it's available to inscribe, and if you do, it has already been inscribed.
Yeah.
So mint NAT token. So go to inscribe text on Unisat, paste this JSON structure, and I know, like from like a normal human perspective, this is like the ugliest thing ever, right? I get it. Yeah. That's why usually like devs like deal with this stuff, and they don't show this on the front end, but this is how early things are in crypto, at least in the ordinal sense. Like everyone is a JSON connoisseur. Yeah. Right. So anyways, in the block section, it says here, replace this with your valid block. So put 10 or 100, whatever number, as long as it's under the current block height.
Yeah. And
then inscribe.
It hasn't been. If you followed step 1, you made sure verify that it hasn't already been claimed, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, that's the one you want to put in there.
Yeah, and that's it. And so, like, what is the result of this? Like, what's happened over, like, the 10, 18 hours, whatever it's been? So let's refresh here on Genie data, and we'll see 85,000 inscriptions in, like, the 18 hours.
Which is absolutely bonkers and mind-blowing in itself. And
yeah, we talked to Benny. So Benny's feeling the fallout as well, the radioactivity. And so he was like, you know what, guys? This is very impressive. 85,000 inscriptions in less than 24 hours is insane.
Yeah.
So he's like, we need to run with this, and you need to develop a developer ecosystem and all that. So
yeah, and we're already seeing out there and requests right from the ecosystem, people who are like, yeah, I like this. I'm seeing value in this conceptually. I want to, participate in some of these earliest mints. So shit, maybe I want to deploy some, whatever. So now where are the tools, the infrastructure built around this, the front end interfaces, the indexer support, all that. So if you remember back to bitmap days, dude, it took several weeks in order for all that stuff to start to emerge, right?
It took 17 days. I remember because we were covering it from the drop, dude.
Yeah. I know, yeah. So we did the same thing, like we were claiming those blocks and stuff. Everybody did. It's like you go to Unisat or Genie data or whatever, you just verify that there was a block remaining to claim, right? And then once you got past that step, it was much easier to interpret, of course, like inscription. You didn't really have to rely on copying and pasting anything because the instructions were very, very simple, right?
For sure.
Block height dot bitmap. So
yeah,
so same thing, but yeah, of course, like
we're dealing with a fungible token, and so we had to follow fungible token standards, right?
Correct.
And so we had to use JSON structure, and so that's how it came out. So okay, so like what is, how do you encompass like all that occurred over the 18 hours? Like essentially, there's two tokens, NAT and there's BMT.
Yes.
So the TLDR is if you inscribed this block 817 in the way that we showed you earlier, right, with that tweet. If you inscribe this block for NAT, you own 386 million NAT tokens. Where the hell did that number come from, my man? Well, if you'd paid attention to the actual documentation, this number and this inscriptions, they all point to an inscription that says a particular piece of data on Bitcoin's blockchain called bits.
Yeah.
So what is bits? So go to blockchain.com, search for this block, and there's this little thing here called bits. And then look at that number, 386 million.
Yeah.
Right? So that means that if you had inscribed this block with this ticker, you own 386 million NAT tokens. Sorry, up here. NAT tokens.
So who established that reference or that rule? Like, what's the process of, an NAT ticker, and now every time I mint, a block, how do I link this data field to that block?
It's through a reference inscription.
Right.
So part of the JSON data is pointing to the deploy inscription, which the deploy inscription is pointing to the element, which is the identification of a pattern within Bitcoin's block data.
Correct. So yeah, all this is explained in the docs for sure, but I think this pattern, this flow, this
is part of like deploying a fungible token on Bitcoin. This flow, right? Yeah. We didn't come up with this arbitrarily; it already existed. We're just using that flow.
So I guess can we go back just in case people didn't see the element? Let's just take a look at the element inscription.
All right, here we go. So the first dot element inscription I inscribed in June 26th. This is pre-blockout, by the way.
Yeah.
So we were cooking this concept up since then. But the DMT element is down here. DMT.11.element. Yeah. 11 refers to an encoded field on Bitcoin. So that's just fancy say is like I took the bits field, gave it a number, and then that's part of the spec. And so then that's it, right?
Correct.
So I gave it a name, DMT. It's just a random name. I could have put Will on there.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's been inscribed. And now when you deploy a token, anybody can deploy a fungible token. Point to this DMT.element, and you have a deployed token based on that data set that
Correct.
DMT.11 represents.
Yeah, so that's just to kind of like a little bit go more in depth into, again, like the hierarchy of the flow, the different procedures that kind of like go in place in order to result in what it is here you're presenting, right?
Yeah.
Like how are these units of account being generated, right? It's non-arbitrary. That's kind of like the whole point of the framework.
Right. Yeah, but I own a block. It's the same block. I own 817,824.bitmap. Did you take my token? No. The answer is no. The reason is because in this scheme, in this this standard, someone else can point to the same element and generate a different token as we did, called BMT. And so with this logic, part of the deploy inscription points to the .bitmap, the first .bitmap inscription. And it says basically that if you own .bitmap, you own the BMT token. And the way you inscribe it is through a parent-child inscription.
So why do you have to do that? Well,
so parent-child inscription is just it's a method to prove that you own an inscription and have on-chain provenance.
Okay.
Right. So On-Chain Monkey is the one that pioneered this.
Yeah, Danny Yang. Yeah.
And so they're leveraging they're creating their collection.
Yeah.
And so think of BMT as like a fungible token collection based on your bitmap.
Correct.
And so you own the BMT token because you own the bitmap. And so NAT, the token, is completely separate concept. It's just an onboard. It's an onboarding tool, a demonstration tool for people to get exposed to non-arbitrary tokens.
Correct. And again, to demonstrate that, like, again, this isn't like exclusive to just the NAT token itself. This is it's a method that anybody can kind of recreate. And again, reference any element that's registered, which points to any different pattern or sequence that already exists non-arbitrarily on chain. That's it. Yeah. That's the whole point of all this. It's just the introduction of, again, a new optional token genesis method that didn't exist previous to this. Right?
Correct.
And again, it was identified and rooted based on what we saw Bitoshi do with bitmaps, right?
Yeah.
So he did this in like in the most informal of senses, right? Like just block height.bitmap. So that inscription itself very similar to these element inscriptions. It's basically Bitoshi declaring that he's found a pattern on Bitcoin, right? The block height pattern.
That's right.
And he associated bitmaps to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And then now people are starting to derive potential, like if you read the actual bitmap theory, very beginning writings from Bitoshi himself, the idea was to reference the data of every block by distributing the ownership of these blocks individually. And the thing we're all kind of referencing is the transactions in order to create like a topographical representation of what could potentially become a metaverse layer, right? All that still stands.
100%.
Right, but that didn't really mean like every single block height that's being inscribed is like now you have property rights to all the data that exists within that block.
Correct.
That's not at all implied and can't really be enforced either.
Yeah, you can't enforce that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree. And one of the things that is more interesting to us is not necessarily how many inscriptions are being had or anything. I'm curious how many more elements are being inscribed. Those are the people paying attention. They're understanding the doc. It's like, hey, elements are sort of like, discovering a star, a new star in the sky, and then giving it its name. And so we had the first person or the second person to generate an element, Coinbase.37.element. And so this was early on. This was like a few hours when it dropped.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, there's 9 pages of elements. So all these are like weird because
some of those are different.
Yeah, they're something else. But you can see here is like people are giving Satoshi ASCII with a pattern 731 with a field 16.element. So this is legit.
Yeah, that's a legit registry right there.
Yeah, and there's another one, DMT.7.11. So people are just taking the DMT name and just applying it to many
different
of these
fields.
Elements. Yeah. And so here goes. Like someone's just like inscribing all these. So all now we just point to these. We're gonna get a count of how many tokens this represents. But you point to this and you create a token off of it.
A new non-arbitrary token.
Right. And just remember that you can still expand on this, right? 17 field has patterns within it. So you can name a different pattern, call it will pattern.17.element.
Yeah. Or we're seeing some of these. Some of them aren't just like invoking just the value of these fields, right? Some of them are actually, they're looking for patterns within fields. So that is like originally what we wanted. We did not demonstrate with our first two NAT deployments, right? We invoked the field of in both cases, right? Because we were trying to create that equitable distribution mechanic, similar to what we see like in a lot of like the fair mints that made BRC20 so popular, right? We agree with the fair mint distribution like principle.
Correct.
It's very good for onboarding like an ecosystem, but the only variable now that we're introducing is reproducing the same fair distribution model, but with non-arbitrary data roots to again basically reference the on-chain pattern to provide an actual supply of existence for that token, not just an arbitrary just pull it out of thin air. Here's 21 trillion.
Yeah.
Just came out from nothing. Like let's leverage what exists on chain and try and still maintain the ethos of what it is that makes BRC20s and all these different fungible tokens so valuable as like community onboarding mechanisms, whatever. But provide an alternate option for ecosystem designers.
And that's not the only sort of like use case and value add from NATs. The value is that it expands. For every new block, there's a new pattern formed and new tokens being added to the ecosystem, and it's a way to continuously onboard and grow your ecosystem, right? And so, and so this is like people are waking up to like the concept of like these elements, and they're giving their own names.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. So at some point, inscribe is going to display these elements, and then again, like how many deployers are actually pointing to them, referencing them in their deploy inscriptions, and of course, like track and log all the different NFTs that are being generated from that. Like and that's the whole point. Like again, the weapon of mass creation, right? That's what we wanted to see.
Yeah,
you don't have to do this. That was like how we started yesterday's video. Just because now there's a fork in the digital asset creation process, or the arbitrary and non-arbitrary. Yeah. That's not to say like anything of arbitrary creation means is like all of a sudden invalidated. It's not.
Correct.
In any way.
Correct.
Right. It's just now there's multiple options in how you want to, again, design an ecosystem.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about this tweet here. It says by Kryptonite. It says, now this is getting weird. The NAT was meant to be a gift for the bitmap owners, but now everybody can mint. Am I getting this right? And so Snarky Puppy comes in and says, no, the NAT token itself is a mint using the DMT protocol, which is what they are trying to showcase here. The token proves the concept of naming a data element. Generating a token based on rules regarding that data element is then indexed by track.
Yeah.
Right? So these are just rule sets to allow projects like Track and others to index and like understand like what people are trying to do with these inscriptions, right? And the way you do that is you create a standard, everyone follows the standard, and then it gets properly indexed, and then markets form based on the standard.
Correct. Yeah.
That's how it works. I mean, you just work within the rules and you get recognized on this like list of NATs.
Correct.
And so, but this is like, if you own a bitmap, you own an NAT. It's like, well, first of all, my tweet was in September, way before the drop. This is when we were talking about NATs, we're talking about DMT, and we're formulating this thought process and like talking about it publicly. And then so I mentioned, so if you own a bitmap or a parcel, you own the NAT associated with the bitmap or parcel. That NAT can be verified through a parent-child inscription. So we've already formulated the concept. It's just confusing that NAT without the money sign is an umbrella term to represent non-arbitrary tokens. Correct.
And there exists again a demonstration of this, right, with the BMT token. So there's two separate tokens, and again, the parent-child association is that provenance you're talking about. That
exactly.
That's how you authenticate or verify that the NAT that does exist within the bitmap that you own.
Yeah.
It's now mintable, right, through that model.
Yeah.
So Snarky Puppy, I think he just adds one more bit here at the end.
And so he responding to this guy says, you're not understanding the protocol and you're confusing this token, money sign NAT, with the concept of non-arbitrary tokens. There will and are non-arbitrary tokens that will be associated with owning your bitmap. Just let this play out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, this was 5 hours ago. So after the drop, so it's like just confusing concepts. But it's interesting. Like you pull up these tweets from like a long time ago, like completely out of context, and then you're using it to like further your own personal understanding, which could be wrong.
Right. Well, I mean, it's not about wrong or right. It's this is what the invisible hand does, right? The market is allowed to deliberate and again come to a consensus around. Now we've introduced a new variable, right? That was the whole point. We wanted to achieve exactly that. Just introduce a new option, a new competitor in the ring, in the arena.
Yeah.
Of again token value genesis, and it's been done one specific way up until now. We've only seen it being done one way. We just wanted to introduce a new vector, right?
Yeah.
And so it's expected that there was going to be this much like disruption, this much deliberation, this much
100%.
non-agreement, and that's how you come to a consensus. So exactly what we're seeing is exactly what we're expecting to happen. And eventually the invisible hand's going to pick and choose. And,
That's right.
propel whatever it is they see fit to fit within whatever ecosystem model, whether it's BMP or BMT, completely up to the markets to decide that.
Yep.
And whatever benefits or detriments that come with that invisible hand's ultimate decision, that's up to the ecosystem to kind of resolve at that point, right?
Yeah. I mean, when we were talking about bitmap before the blockout, there was so many hate against like bitmap. Like you can't own blocks, and you can't do that, and you can't. It's like people are gonna hate everything, no matter what. So it's that's part of the flow of how things work. So
so I think it's not even like officially day one's not even over yet since we deployed this. We deployed like or we launched the Git book and everything around
8 or 9 p.m.
Yeah, so about like 4 or 5 hours from now. So we're like around hour 18, hour 19, something like that. So already exceeded our expectations by far.
Yeah.
Way by far. And in case anybody was curious, we did not pre-inscribe any NATs, no blocks, nothing. We decided as soon as the video's out, the Git book is published, okay, it's going to be free reign for everybody. So we don't have any early blocks, nothing, because we tried to claim some, but somebody outcompeted.
Yep.
And it's exactly what you want to see in a free, fair distribution mechanism, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, there's 80,000 inscriptions, right? So that's 10% of the supply rate taken up in less than 24 hours. This is significantly faster than bitmap, only because people are aware that claiming blocks is now a meta, right? Mm-hmm. So people they understand like the process, but this is extremely fast. And I mean, this is part of it.
I think we're expecting to see, I'm sure we're going to see some support pretty soon here from I don't know exactly from who. We're definitely reaching out to Ordinal's wallet to see because they did contribute quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Right around the halfway point for bitmap is whenever they started to provide like a much more a better batch minting interface, a better visual representation of like what's the existing landscape of claimed and non-claimed blocks are. And really, like, attributed to the narrative of the blockout thing. Remember, that was quite the monumental moment for bitmap, and so more than likely, we might be on the road to another second blockout here.
Yeah. Shout out to Benny for sticking through this the fallout and radioactivity.
I mean, Benny already has like so much on his table.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, I mean, you got tap, you got pipe, you got track.
Yeah, man.
And we're not the only ones who are trying to build on tap, right? Yeah. There's for obvious reasons, right? This couldn't even been done without it.
Yeah, so this nuke has been launched. You can't put the nuke back into the missile.
It's already done, dude.
It's done.
Yeah, the weapon of mass creation has been deployed.
Yeah.
The suitcase bomb or whatever, however you did it. Suitcase bomb. It's out there, dude.
All right, guys. I appreciate you guys for watching. If you have any questions, let us know in the comment section below. Our video did really well, so thank you guys for kind of like interacting with it and asking questions on our very first token like distribution method. Mm-hmm. And that's it. We'll follow up on Twitter. Thank you guys for watching. We'll catch you in the next video.
Peace.